Welcome and thank you for joining today. Today we are excited to have you here, especially for our PathLock Innovation Series. If you would like to join more of our sessions for the PathLock Innovation Series, I'm putting a link in the chat right now. And that will, if you click on that link, it'll give you all of the sessions that are upcoming today. And we can announce more about upcoming sessions a little bit later. This session is titled A Holistic Approach to Your SAP Cybersecurity Assessment, and Ralph Kemp, VP of SAP Development here at PathLock, will be presenting today. Ralph, will you go to the next slide?
Yep.
If you have any audio issues during this webinar, click on Preferences and then Audio. From there, you can check to see if you are using the appropriate audio device. You can also click on the play sound to check if you can hear the sound coming through your speakers. This presentation will take approximately 40 minutes. There will be a Q&A session following the presentation, so we encourage you to add any questions into the question box that you'll find on your control panel for our speaker to answer at the end of the event. To prevent background noise, everyone is on mute. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you a lot. Okay, now let's start. First of all, a little bit with the agenda. My name is Ralph Kemp, and I'm working in the SAP business now since more than 25 years, I think. So I have a lot of experience, and I will give a short introduction, then a company overview, short game to test your attention, then to talk a little bit about the most frequently underestimated activities, how to use the cyclic security analysis of our vulnerability scan engine in combination with real-time threat detection. Why is this combination so essential? And at the end, I will give some overview how to optimize your vulnerability assessment landscape and procedures, and give you some key takeaways that you can optimize your systems. First of all, to give an oversight where we are and where we operate. The PathLock Group is a group of multiple former companies focused on access control and cybersecurity in the application layer. With the help of our systems, millions of users are monitored in systems of major companies, some shown on the left side. The vulnerability scan engine is installed in more than 5,000 SAP systems. We have more than 500 employees around the world, and 10 times typical ROE is achieved by customers through automation, reduced cost, and minimized risk exposure. So using our tools helps you dramatically to minimize your invest in controls and bring immediate results from the beginning. Let's have a look. So we operate worldwide. That means wherever you live, we always have an office and service and support in your time zone, focused mainly on the North American sector, Europe, and also the Asia Pacific sector. And our focus is based on 3 lines of activity. First of all, today we will talk about application security, especially on vulnerability management and detection in combination with code vulnerabilities, transport vulnerabilities, how we act in the zero-day research, and give you some oversight if you detect vulnerabilities, how to work against them, to establish detection response processes, and how to integrate your vulnerability scan process with CM and logging infrastructures. Not in focus today are the modules focusing on access governance and enforced controls. So we also have capabilities to analyze your user and permission set, to implement user provisioning and user recertification processes, and as well as enforce the controls and work against vulnerabilities by transaction monitoring and access blocking via data masking or transaction blocking. We can also block transports. We can perform dynamic authorization assignment in systems, meaning that the usage of authorizations is also controlled via attributes. And for certain application systems, we also provide single sign-on and multi-factor enforcements to control also the access of the user in the system. First of all, I want to test your attention. And this small video is without sound. And the question is, how many subs have been sold? So we'll start this video and focus a little bit what's going on the screen. As you see, there's a lot of activity and a lot of subs are thrown in the crowd. You should focus on the persons in orange to find out how many subs have been sold or given away to the persons in orange. So this is, when you look to this behavior, it's like looking on your SAP systems. SAP systems are complex. So we do not only have subs, but we have IT general controls, we have patching, we have OSS nodes, we have users, access, networks, connections, a lot of stuff to look on and to control. The current sub-security situation in many companies is as follows. So the most activity is still performed in the area of user authentication, user provisioning, user management, authorization reviews, and SOD controls with focus on application level security. Still missing, and that is also what a lot of European customers reported during some interviews of the German SAP user group, the DSAG. It was detected that system and infrastructure security was still in a not so optimized shape, to express it in a positive way, and that the hardening of the system, the code, the RFC gateways, the networks, and so on was not well. And also analysis and reporting on that controls and vulnerability scans and also threat detection was not integrated, meaning that customers are using a lot of tools and not one focal tool to analyze and report on detected vulnerabilities. At the end, what we learned from our security inspections, what we have done in the customer environments the last year, is there was always at least one major security issue with the system, allowing us to access the system via directly with the users or indirectly via interfaces or transports or mechanisms to bring information out or code or data in. And this is where the problem begins. If you have a complex landscape with more and more systems, and if you only focus on the application levels, authorizations and users, you will oversee that some functions in SAP environments do not need any user to maintain. The NIST cybersecurity framework is one tool or framework which is used to optimize the vulnerability situation of systems, and it is a cycle which begins with the identification of risks, then going on the protection layer, establishing detection controls, for instance, anomaly detection, security continuous monitoring, is helping you to define your response process and also helping you define your recovery scenarios. And this NIST cybersecurity framework is one of the major ones. There are others available. When we look here to the NIST framework, the PassLog suite will give you support in the area of protection, especially in the area of hardening your systems, protect your data against access. It's also giving you support in the detection area, meaning if somebody is trying to access your system, your data, your databases, we can detect also that active measure, and we can also start activities against it. And also response is where we train the customers in a way that SAP operation teams are trained to establish a response process which is reacting in a very fast way, in a very precise way, with minimum interference with the system operation. That is what is typically requested, that you should not bring down the system during the response. You should try to focus on the detail what happened and to work against it. At the end, hopefully nobody should have to recover from an outage, but nevertheless, this has to be prepared and planned, and everybody should be trained in the case of a severe issue how to stop a system and to recover it in a way that the malicious software pieces configuration is taken out of the system. Layers of protection. When we are talking about vulnerabilities, the question is, where can we detect a vulnerability and which type of vulnerabilities we have? Classical systems are protected with a role-based access control approach, meaning if you look on the system from the role-based approach, you think if I assign appropriate and minimum authorizations, nothing can happen. The pitfall here is that some objects in the system do not even need a user or an authorization. This is one fact. Another fact is that very often in customer situations, the focus is on segregation of duties in the financial and the purchase to pay and order to cash area, but not on the system operations. And here, for instance, a small handful of critical basic authorizations or a direct access to this operating system or database will allow a user to override and overrule all the other SOD controls in the system. And the risk of having this type of vulnerabilities is much higher than the monetary risk of segregation of duties, because if somebody can stop your system and delete it from the disk, it is the maximum risk you have. Your IT system is gone, and if the attacker is doing it in a way that the data gets encrypted or is doing it in a very malicious way, you will never get your system back. Therefore, the risk amount of a technical vulnerability is typically much higher. The effort to clean it and to detect it is very often much lower than for SODs, but nevertheless, customers are spending more money in authorization level, application level SOD controls than on that basic protection. Our approach is to help customers also to activate attribute-based access. That means wherever role-based access is not sufficient, attribute-based access will help you to protect the systems in a way, for instance, that if somebody has a permission, but if he's logging on from a terminal not in the country, the permissions are not usable. And this is not possible in a normal SAP system. When you have a permission, you can perform the action. Attribute-based control means we overlay the authorizations with an attribute vector, and we can control permissions much more granular. And this is also an easy task to mitigate some vulnerabilities on the authorization area, where you say, I cannot control the access by roles in such granular way as needed. One option could be user access to develop something. One objective could be to use an attribute-based access control to limit the access capabilities of a user. And this is dramatically reducing the surface, attack surface. But when we are talking about the real vulnerabilities, we should also, and that is very essential, we must look also on the technical areas. Vulnerability detection is also about detecting vulnerabilities in the system layer itself, below the users and the authorizations. Classically, we are talking here about IT general controls. More specific in SAP, we are talking about sub-specific hardening. When we are talking about the SAP systems, we have to take not only the sub application layer, the kernel, into account. We also have to take into account the database layer, the operating system layer, the network layer. So the whole tech stack of a system is part of the vulnerability assessment. And here we come to a point that it gets really complicated. The first question is, if you want to detect vulnerabilities, you need to know about the vulnerabilities. This is typically a problem in a customer environment. Who's telling you about the vulnerabilities? It's learning, it's reading, if you don't have a tool like our Passlog vulnerability scanner. And it is also about resources. Vulnerability scanning via Excel sheets, handmade, handcrafted, is very, very expensive because the system tech stack is deep and wide. Very, very often customers have not only one system, they have multiple systems. I know customers in Europe having hundreds of SAP systems in parallel with different types of software. So Doing it manually is normally out of scope. Doing nothing is also out of scope. So here's where we provide our offering. We provide a tool which allows you to do vulnerability detection as well as authorization, critical authorization detection in one tool, in combination with threat detection. What is the difference between vulnerability and threat? So vulnerability is the possibility to do something. The threat is the action itself or the attack. That means the vulnerability is the open door, the threat, and the attack is the person who breaks in and goes through that open door. And here we need also a layer in the access control that we can analyze the open doors and that we can see with the camera who's going through, and optimum we block that he can pass. And here is also our strategy that the path lock vulnerability and threat detection combination on the one hand allows you to detect the problem, the open door, is also detecting the attacker, and in certain areas it can block the attack. That means you can stop something, you can stop a transaction, you can cancel a user session, you can block a lot of things in the system that no harm could happen. For instance, you can block a malicious transport already at the development system layer. So these are the layers where you have to look for. And this is where also we focus with the software and also consulting approach at the customer situation on it. What you need is a policy-based security scan. What means a policy? Policy is the security, let's say the paper, the documentation about all the to-be situations, and also on the opposite side, the not to be situation. That means you have to specify what is a quality, how should a system be configured. And this is what we deliver from the standard with regular updates provided by Passlog. So our research team is doing, on the one hand, zero-day research to find new vulnerabilities in the SAP tech stack. On the other hand, we inspect all the publications from other security researchers from SAP and also from software vendors like Oracle and others, aggregate that and deliver in a permanent update cycle a policy which allows you to scan the systems against vulnerabilities. The flexibility is that out of the box you get more than 4,000 checks, which with one mouse click could be started in your systems. And you are always up to date because we have a permanent update cycle. So always get new information about new vulnerabilities and countermeasures. The effort to install the software and to activate it is typically less than 1 day. So we do a lot of proof of concepts with 2-3 system lines where the sales and service engineers are installing the software in the first 2-hour sessions. In the second session, we pre-configure together with the customer demo vulnerability policy based on our recommendations. We start an inspection, and in the third 2-hour session, we can talk about the findings, the results, and can give the customer first overview how the system situation is and what we propose as countermeasures. System monitoring and hardening project methodology typically starts on the left side by defining the audit requirements, the policy requirements. This is driven on the one hand by this actual situation in the security area, what are vulnerabilities, also impacted by the customer's business type. So for pharmaceutical, for banking, for insurance, you might have additional security and configuration requirements or logging requirements. Once this is defined, you can start an initial system landscape analysis with the tool. And from that analysis, you can start your hardening project. Hardening means you get a proposal what to do and what to adjust in a way that it gets more safe and secure. That could be system settings, permissions, user accounts, network database, operating system settings, or even settings in other codings and other areas of the system. So the target state is defined by your policy. The actual state is defined by the initial scan. And then by use of the finding database and the Passlog vulnerability scan, you can work against it. You can implement the proposed changes based on our policy, and by iteration by iteration by iteration, your system comes in a better quality and shape. From the beginning, you can activate also threat detection and data masking. That means you are more protected than before because the system also can stop activities against the system before the system is really fully hardened and you can detect activities very early. Classical hardening cycle is never done in one cycle. Most customers I know are doing several iterations, starting with to train the cycle with parameters and sometimes deactivating user accounts, and then it gets more complicated, like activating network encryption, activating single sign-on, deleting ABAP code, and so on. So we have customers, bigger customers in Europe, where we performed hardening projects in environments with more than 250 SAP landscapes. The complete project to harden everything on every layer with 50,000 users and 250 systems took about a year. If you have only a one system line landscape, it could be a couple of days or weeks only. So the amount of time is not that high. We also provide several tools to automate changes. That means we have nice helper tools. If you want to if you don't want to do it manually, you can just use a tool to change the setting. We will never change all the settings automatically, because a lot of settings have dependencies to other settings, and whoever is telling you we can fix your system with the software, I would never try it. It has never worked in the practice. You have outages and disruptions. So if you follow our way, you have a semi-automatic fixing, user controlled with backout plans, and this is an absolutely more secure way to perform this action. Now I want to give a short demo. What is a policy and how we perform a scan. So from here I will switch to an SAP system. And in the SAP system, I have security policies. The security policies are grouped by areas. So this is our classical policy, and we have, for instance, one area, application server ABAP, configuration items, kernel parameters, and we have various parameter settings where you can define the values. And this editor to change the values is pre-configured. That means we propose a value for external debugging, for instance. We say it should have this value, and you have a risk description. What will happen if it is not configured as this proposal has been made. Other areas are focusing, for instance, on the message server, also parameters and settings. And here also you can see the check what is performed, and also the value is not equal to empty, for instance, if you want to specify an ACL file. Based on this policy, the system performs security inspections. The security inspections are delivering results. And the result and the complete operation of the tool is web-based. That means you can define the policy and you can start all the policy checks directly from the web. And from the web also you can access the findings. You will see which findings have been identified, which systems are affected. You can drill down by the system layer. You can drill down by the risk areas, database and operating system. You can go to the details. You will see if you have mitigated risks or remaining risks, and you will see all the details. You can drill down to the detail level. And of course, you can see trend analysis. That means what was your initial situation and what was the situation afterwards. So this scan only has been performed in my analysis time once. Therefore, I don't have a trend. The dashboard is very helpful. You can start the analysis from the dashboard. You can analyze it from the dashboard, and you can also print out reports from the dashboard. If you imagine that the customer has multiple systems, let's say 100 systems, it's very helpful to do it automatically. So give me 1 second that the PDF is saved. So you will get an audit report with the findings and the details. This report is also configurable, and it helps you to deliver the vulnerability situation at one mouse click also to the system owners. So either you give the system owners access to the dashboard that they can look up their findings directly in the dashboard, or you can send out a PDF file with a vulnerability assessment scan report directly to the application owners or system owners, and that helps you to speed up the process to integrate the vulnerability findings with any help desk tool like ServiceNow. There are also automatic integrations possible, and this is a way to work together and to scan your systems in a very smooth and easy way. Now coming back to my slides, and now I want to ask, or everybody should ask himself, did you notice that? And now let's look to the resolving. The pizza truck, which was changed. He has now glasses. Somebody has placed a suspicious bag. So all the things which are happening in the background of system operations. And if you look on a very complex system like an SAP system, you can have a snapshot analyze, or one day, or an initial analyze, what we call a vulnerability scan. The vulnerability scan, for instance, would be the photo of the initial situation. And in the initial situation, there was no bag, and there was no pizza truck, and no glasses. So in the meantime, as I was now explaining our software, something happened with a pizza truck, with a bag, and with a moderator in that small film. And this is what we call the change or the threat process. Be aware of the background activities. So there are a lot of hidden activities running permanently in the system. Background activity means activities which are automatically performed by the system or by the users or by externals. That could be, for example, data downloads, password changes, or any other events like transporting a malicious information to your next system. And to also allow you to detect such vulnerabilities and attacks and threats, you can use a combined approach of our software. Combined approach means you can also detect the threat. And this is what I want to show now in the next video. One attack, for instance, is when we talk about vulnerabilities in the transport system, there are static checks like perform authorization checks. Who can transport in the system? Who can create a transport? Who can release or who can import a transport? We have static checks like how is the transport profile configured? Is the logging activated? Are certain security relevant transport settings activated? But we can also look to the content. And here, for instance, I want to explain that you can transport users and passwords in a hidden way. I will start now my short video. You will see here this demo user has a password. And this password is working. So we know the password of an attacker. What we can do is we can inject password hash values to other users and put them in a transport. By installing the transport, we can override the target password of any user in the system where we know the username. So this transport is now imported, and now the user is trying to log on. And as we see here, he's trying to log on with a former password, and the old password is no longer valid. And now we are using our injected password. And now we can log on to a foreign user. This is a very easy attack to a system. I would say most of the ABAP developers should be in a position to perform such an attack. It is bypassing everything around authorizations, SODs, typically authorization level controls. The vulnerability scan vector, what you need here is scanning on transport content and transport activities. And here we provide a very deep rule set, which allows you to scan all the transports for malicious content, like user master information and passwords, to block the transport already at the export phase. It means if somebody tries to export it, you will get a ticket, and you will be informed that the transport will be blocked. You can inspect it and somebody has to release it. If somebody tries to import such a transport to a system will scan the transport before importing, and it is shielding the system against any malicious transport who somebody wants to change the transport file and also wants to import such a stuff to the system. So this is where we are doing far more as only vulnerability checking in a static way. We provide also a combined static and cyclic and permanent real-time approach on the vulnerability and threat area. Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Real-time cybersecurity monitoring by PathLog is the integration of static checks, vulnerability checks running daily, weekly, monthly, or running multiple times a day. So you can run a vulnerability check as often as you want. Most customers are running vulnerability scans daily. That means once every day, every system is scanned against all the policy requirements you have. In parallel, we provide permanent cybersecurity monitoring that also the change in the system is monitored and the behavior by means of inspecting all the log files, inspecting first that logging is active. This is part of the vulnerability scan. So the vulnerability scan will control that the logging is active. When the logs are produced, the cybersecurity threat detection is analyzing the logs and is looking for patterns, negative and positive patterns. And all the negative patterns where we know this might be a misbehavior or an attack are inspected automatically, and tickets are created for the security team. This helps you to extract the relevant information from multiple systems of millions of lines of logs to condense them in hopefully less than 10 investigations per day, hopefully no incidents or maybe 2 incidents which can be handled by a security team. And this is the way where you can also control the configuration and the behavior of the users and interfaces in real time with a very, very low effort, time, and also cost effort. If you put it together, you can establish a vulnerability scan which combines the cyclic scan, which is daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, where you can control the system, where you can focus on the IT general controls, extended controls, whatever policy requirements you have based on your business, in combination with the real-time observation of the system logs, security log, transport logs, user change logs, whatever you can imagine, other changes. So the system is also automatically detecting a change in a difference between two vulnerability scans. And in certain areas, it can also block the attack. That means we interfere with the user or with the terminal, and we block it in a way that it cannot be finalized. To put the pieces now together, some key takeaways if you want to go to the direction of hardening. First of all, avoid blind spots in security management. SAP security goes far more beyond users and authorization. That means if you are going to establish a team, you need a joint team where the knowledge of technical security and compliance guidelines and user and authorization security is combined in one, in Amazon's virtual team, and this team is working together. Combine your cyclic monitoring with a real-time monitoring. That means don't expect if you do that story once per year that your system is properly configured. We noticed a lot of changes in systems on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. We noticed that SAP is releasing security notes once per month. So there's always at least a monthly activity in system hardening. Most customers have switched here to permanent scanning and permanent detection. That means they are doing hardening once per month by implementing the security nodes, but they have daily security observations and scans in the system. Integrate your security strategy with your enterprise-wide solution. That means very often SAP is the blind spot because everybody is focusing on network and operating system security. So we can integrate our application layer monitoring by means of standard processes, syslog, ZM integration with any tool in the market to give you an oversight, a holistic oversight of the complete security, enterprise-wide security situation, including the application layer. And this holistic security means that cyclic analysis and real-time detection works side by side. And also avoid a lack of cybersecurity resources and use GAIN capabilities to solve the problem. It's all about resources, especially employee resources are hard to get in the market. If you're going for a security initiative, if you don't have the resources available, you can also get an offer for us for managed security services where we provide the whole security service, including the software and the daily operations as a managed security offering powered by Passlock. And keeping your security up to date. This is very essential. It's not a one-time task. It's not a sprint. It is a marathon, and it takes time. Now I want to open the session for question and answers and hand back to Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Ralph, for that presentation. And I just wanted to reiterate, if you have any questions, please add them now into the question box. Okay, so our first question we have is, does your software work on BW or HANA systems? Maybe
Yes,
that's S4.
It does. It works on any ABAP Java Stack software. So the central system or the central analytics engine needs to be at the moment on an ABAP stack, but we can also monitor Java stacks. In the future, an agentless operation will be possible, that it could be coupled with our Passlock Cloud offering, and we're doing all the inspections agentless with a zero footprint in all the SAP landscapes. This is planned for 2023. I see the next question. Does your software integrate with Splunk? Yes, it does. We are working together with Splunk with standard syslog interfaces, or we can also use the Splunk HTTP event collector. So this interfaces, and the complete forwarding process of information to Splunk is predefined and is working out of the box within an hour.
Perfect. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have for right now. If you have any more questions, add them to the chat box, and as we're going through the announcements, we can answer those. Oh, it looks like we have one more. Will Passlock support monitoring of SAP Web Dispatcher?
Yes, it is possible. We can also monitor the activity and the configuration of standalone web dispatchers via the SAP control service interfaces. Yes, it's possible.
Perfect. Okay, can you go to the next slide, Ralph?
Yep.
Okay, so since this is part of the Passlock Innovation Series, and just as a reminder, in the chat box, you'll find a link to pathlock.com/innovation-series, and that will be, you can see the schedule for upcoming webinars right there and register for upcoming webinars we have today and tomorrow and throughout this week. If you would like to book a meeting with us here at Passlock, you can email events@pathlock.com before the 31st of January, and then mention you have attended this session at the Innovation Series during this Innovation Summit to win a $25 Starbucks virtual card. So we encourage you to do that, and then we have a few other announcements if you'll go to the next slide.
Yep.
Okay, so we just wanted to thank everybody for coming and announce the next session that we have coming up during our Passlock Innovation Series. Our next session is with SAP, and the title will be, What Considerations Should You Make When Thinking About Moving to S/4HANA and SAP RISE? So if you would like to join us for that, go ahead and click that link in the chat, and then that session will start in about 20 minutes. So we hope to see you there, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much, Stephanie, for the moderation. Have a nice day.